because I don't think we're free when we need to achieve, because one day I do well, I'm a success, the other day I'm not, and I'm a failure. I think freedom comes from that internal understanding I'm deeply loved, come what may.
This is Down to Earth Conversations, where we hear from ordinary people who are helping to bring a bit of heaven down to earth. Kia ora, welcome to another episode of Down to Earth Conversations with me, your host, Andy Dixon. As you may be able to hear, I'm not recording from my desk in my bedroom today. I've just finished my kōrero with today's guest, Donald Scott, about being, stillness, birds and nature, silence, and hearing the sound that lies underneath the loudness and the busyness of life. So I thought rather than go home and carry on with life, I would come here to Pūtarangamotu, Riccarton Bush, the only piece of native forest left in Ōtautahi, Christchurch, and experience some bird life and nature and stillness for myself. To be honest, it's pretty breathtaking. I spend a lot of time talking to people who are doing amazing things in the world, but today we get to hear about being, about noticing, listening, and knowing our worth outside of what we do. Donald has been on a journey of learning to be for many years now, and he takes us on that journey with him today. It's deeply beautiful and deeply challenging. This is episode 56 of Down to Earth Conversations. Here's Donald Scott. Donald Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Kia ora, Andy, great to be here.
Nō he koe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Wow, how long have we got? You know, I've been on a bit of a te reo te ao Māori journey, but asking the question of where do I come from, who am I? So firstly, tuatahi korore ki tātou I rongo rawa, mangarongo ki te whenua whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. That great whakatauki or proverb from Luke chapter 2, the announcement of the Messiah, glory to God, peace on earth, goodwill to all peoples, I think encapsulates the passion of my heart. Firstly, I'm a follower of Jesus, glory to God, peace on earth. Peace is a passion of my heart, unity, ko tahitanga, and goodwill to all people. So that's me spiritually, and I was located geographically in a mihi. Where do you come from geographically? From Tamaki Nui Orua, Dannevirke, in southern Hawke's Bay, so Ngāti Kahungunu territory, the mountain being the Ruahinis, the Awa, the river, the Manawatu. That was where I was born, and that's where I came to faith as well, 23-year-old. Married a young lady there that I went to high school with, Janice, had 4 boys there, and shifted down here to Ōtautahi, Christchurch, 2000, and this has become home. Now we're in Ngāi Tahu Whenua, and actually love being down here. I actually feel at home here. So Dannevirke's my home. I go home, but then I come home back to Christchurch. So my people are the Celts. So I've had to work out who am I as a European New Zealander. My iwi has always been a big question, but I've settled on my people came from Ireland and Scotland. So when Ireland beats the All Blacks, you know, I can just never lose there because it feels like they're my people. So nor Celtic toko iwi, Celts are my people. My ancestors came out on a boat, the Tintern Abbey. Sounds a little bit more like a biscuit, but it was a boat that my ancestors came from.
Not the Tim Tam Abbey?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of where I've come from.
So I spend a lot of time on this podcast talking to people that are doing a lot of good stuff in the world, bringing beauty and goodness into the world through what they're doing.
Right.
And there's plenty I could talk to you about in that regard, but the reason I particularly wanted this kōrero is because I've observed you being someone who's learned and is learning, I guess, to notice the beauty and the goodness in the world as it already is, and to see where there's already a bit of heaven on earth, in the present. One way that you're very passionate about is through your I don't know, is it a hobby, is it a whatever, of bird watching?
It's a vocational calling, Andy.
Nice. I googled it to go, is there like a proper name for bird watching? And it sounds like there's a lot of arguments around like bird watchers and birding and twitchers and
twitchers.
Birding. How would you define it?
I think when I was younger, I wanted to be, I am and have been passionate about ornithology, the study of birds, zoology. So when I was a young fellow, I was brought up in the remote hills of southern Hawke's Bay. I loved creation. I loved birds and animals. And African animals. I remember buying all these magazines about East African game parks. I actually went there when I was 19. I think I was kind of lost. I was really lost, actually. I was a good young Kiwi bloke and played rugby, drank far too much booze, that sort of stuff. But I was pretty lost and went over there lonely. But I hitched round East Africa in the 1980s and just feasted on the glory of creation in East Africa. And birds were a big part of that. I had an experience there that I went snorkeling on the Kenyan coast, Malindi. I was with a couple of English guys who went snorkeling. That was actually the first time, because we didn't have coral reefs in the southern Hawke's Bay, so we're snorkeling there in East Africa, Indian Ocean, and I remember just diving down and just being overwhelmed by glory and wonder. I had no grid to understand that, as not having any faith grid, but I came up and saw one of the English guys came, we just took our snorkels out and said, wow, and then dove down again, and I'll never forget that, being overwhelmed with wonder. But now I've got a grid to understand that. I encountered God there. So that was a long answer to come back to birds and creation, because I came to faith when I was 23, and Jesus was outside my worldview as a farmer, shearer, rugby player. I heard the message of Jesus. I heard at a deeper level the message of Jesus, and I thought, oh my goodness, that's all I want. I had no understanding of that except a heart response to say there's something, that's all I want. And I've spent the next several decades trying to understand what the hang that means, but that journey, I think I lost my creational joy there, because my faith grid, my church background, I didn't feel affirmed creation, because it was about spiritual things.
Yeah, right.
It was about doing, and I actually let something go there. So I didn't become an ornithologist or zoologist. I became a hard-working farmer, church worker, which was great. But in more recent years, I've returned to something affirmed, partly my Māori journey, but partly my theological journey, to say that the world is this infused with the glory of God. And so return to something and see birds, creation, as that doorway into the beauty of who God is, something transcendent.
Yeah. What do you enjoy most about your time out looking for the birds?
I've had to recognise that I just feel a great sense of peace. I feel at peace. There's probably no better way to describe that. But I also like the diversity of birds, the beauty, the interconnectedness of all things. The kuaka, the godwit that migrates from here to the Arctic in a non-stop flight of 15,000 miles of this small little bird.
That's incredible.
It's phenomenal, Andy, and I think how it knows how to get there anyway and come back. On their way back, they stop over in China for a meal. You know, we fly to Australia and think, oh, I'm a bit tired. It's a long trip to Australia on a big plane, but these little birds fly to the Arctic non-stop, and I think that points me to the magnificence of the Creator.
So what does it actually look like for you? Like, do you go on holidays and like specifically to go and sit in the bush and look, or is it just that you go out in nature and then you happen to take an interest in what's there? Like, what's that look like for you?
I think maybe it's a bit of a spiritual metaphor for me in my journey. When I notice something in one place, like growing an awareness of a bird or a lake or an estuary, then I start to become aware in all places and see the beauty of not just birds but of creation in all places. So one of the great places I like going to is the Ashley River mouth. It's a beautiful tidal river, and the diversity of birds there is quite extraordinary. I mean, that's a quarter of an hour from where we live, quarter of an hour, 20 minutes from this great city of Ōtautahi, and it's on our doorstep, and there's the diversity there is quite extraordinary. So that's one of the places I go. I love going into the forest and searching out different birds, but it's actually growing an awareness of creation in all places.
Yeah, cool. Do you have a favourite bird that you like to look for?
The kārearea, the falcon, has actually become, not favourite, it's not fair, but actually a bit of a symbol for me. So I have this strange habit of talking to our family about birds. Oh, here goes Dad again. But I prophesy over them because I say, Caleb, you're like the kererū because you're big. You've got this ability to take the big seeds and shift them and, fertilise the forest. And each one of my family, because I see birds have a personality, and we have a personality. So I said, I think you're like this bird here. Not to label them, but to say as a doorway. So St. Francis of Assisi, one of my great heroes, because he loved birds, a little bit romantic with, birds on his shoulders and that. But there was a deep truth to who he was. He would say that the natural was a doorway to the supernatural, the physical a doorway to the spiritual. I think I love that.
Yeah, I really like even just your little mention of the kererū and they can pick up the big seeds, and like there's this beauty about what each bird is and what it does in connection with everything else, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. The interconnectedness of each bird, each animal, each plant.
Do you have particular bird songs that you really like to hear?
Yes. Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm allowed to do that. I know the grey warbler, the rero. We used to live on Harewood Road, and the song thrush, a beautiful introduced bird, has this glorious song, and I noticed we had quite a big section, and there was one summer I noticed this one particular song thrush which would sing in the top of the trees, literally, honestly, for hours on end. And I felt like that scripture, is it Zechariah, I the Lord sing over you. So I hear this song thrush and I felt God's presence and awareness of that. So Jono, our eldest boy, it was around Christmas time, he comes home, and Dave, his brother, has got this powerful slug gun, and he went out shooting. I knew he was going out. He said, I'm just going out to have a few shots down. He goes out. He comes back and all excited. He said, Dad, I got a bird. And instantly I thought, oh no, Jono, you shot my bird. And he did. He said, I got this right on the top of the tree. And for me, it felt like he'd shot God, because God was singing over us. I think, oh, Jono. And he saw my face just drop, and he said, oh, Dad, what, you okay? And I said, no, you shot my bird, Jono. But anyway, the continuation of that story was I noticed, because it was a loud, dominating song, beautiful, but I really noticed the grey warbler, the rero, which is a quieter song, like a warble, this grey warbler. And I noticed it everywhere. I'd go out on the golf course, and it was like, guys, could you shut up? It's so loud out here, a quieter sound. But I tuned into that, and through that, I felt, for me, the rero was the sound of our nation. Nothing against, I'm an introduced species, I guess, to New Zealand, and welcomed here. We welcome the song thrush. But I heard the sound of the land in a deeper way, and it became a powerful metaphor for me. The sound of the land can be quieter, gentler, but when you tune into it, it's absolutely everywhere. It's like tuning into a deeper awareness of God and how He expresses Himself, which we can miss. But when we tune into that sound and get past the noise, perhaps of daily life, the noise perhaps of our jobs and the busyness of life, is tuning in and hearing. So I heard the rero to a deeper level. So Jono helped me to that place by shooting my song thrush.
Oh no. That is quite a powerful concept though, isn't it? in a world where we are so busy and rushed and where there's so much noise,
Yes.
just being able to tune into that which is under the surface of that.
Yes.
And, you know, for me that's been like through getting more healthy mentally has then been a journey of understanding what my feelings feel like.
Yes.
And you know, tuning into what that is, because previously it was, well, that feels awful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to run away from that. And,
yes.
And I remember actually, like a counsellor said to me one time, oh, that, you know, how does that feel when that happens? I was like, awful. They're like, awful's not actually a feeling. It's like a description word
Yes.
of a group of feelings. Like, can we
Yes.
burrow down? And I couldn't. Like, I just had
Yeah.
no way of
Yes.
doing it. And it's not until I've learnt to just sit a little bit deeper and listen to a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I was thinking that as you were talking about that warbler, that it's there and it's beautiful. You know, actually my feelings are beautiful. There's
Yes.
something good about them.
Yeah.
Even the bad one, or the ones that I've considered bad, you know, they're actually there for a reason, to warn me about things, you know, to identify things, if I'm tuned into them. Otherwise I just run and whatever. So
that's good, Andy. And for me, that's become a bit of a metaphor, or my journey. Here's a couple of guys sitting here talking about our feelings, which is not a common thing. But I think I would have said I was an emotional in contact with my feelings. But in my more recent years, are you aware of the Enneagram? That not so much personality, but perhaps a way of understanding our soul, of our deeper heart. And through that I've discovered I'm Enneagram 2, which doesn't sound that sexy. I'm a helper, which I think, oh, okay, that's great. But what unpacked me in that was the helper. The Enneagram 2 is far more aware of emotions out there. Is served. What do you need me to do? I'll do that for you. But actually doesn't know what's going on in their own heart. So I think, looking back, I've been more aware of what's going on for other people than myself. Just what you've expressed there, and I think so. My emotional awareness has been sharper for out there than in my own heart. So my same journey as yours, in a sense, in a different way, but accessing what am I feeling here. You know what I've found of that journey is I've accessed God, because the Bible talks, the word heart is used in Scripture 800 times, never once about the physical organ, but it's a metaphor for our inner world, and Christ dwells in our heart. And I think probably Christ used to dwell in my doing out there.
Yeah,
and it's
right.
great, we're called to serve, of course we are, but that journey to the heart, I think, is the journey of Christianity, of discovering the Christ within, and then we discover him. He's obviously transcendent, but he dwells within, and this transcendent God dwells within. And how do we access that? How do we grow in awareness? So my growing in awareness of creational magnificence and beauty has helped me access an inner world that I'm actually really excited by, this journey of Christ in us, the hope of glory. How do I grow an awareness of that? So that's become a passion and a desire to understand that more. Not just understand, but to actually experience that and not just live externally.
yeah, awesome. You mentioned earlier about that Te Ao Māori has been part of your journey, or Te Ao Māori meaning the world of Māori.
Yes.
How has that journey of learning Te Reo Māori, the language of Māori, learning about the ways of Māori, how has that influenced you in terms of your view on creation?
There was a few years ago, I thought, I'm not sure who I am, what's the greatest thread, because I've been drawn to Te Ao Māori, this indigenous understanding, a contemplative spirituality, which is the slowing down, noticing more so, as well as my faith expression as part of a charismatic Pentecostal church, kind of who am I, what's my greatest grid here. But actually I've seen they all come together, and Te Ao Māori has been, I just deeply profound in that interconnectedness of all things, the holistic nature of, I like the sense of an indigenous worldview, because there's a holistic nature to that, the interconnectedness of all things, an easy interaction of spirituality and physicality, not this separation, which I think with respect our Western worldview is far more dualistic. spirituality, in a Christian sense, spirituality is higher than physicality, and actually God's probably going to screw this planet up and start again because this is a disaster, and because it's about getting off this planet into a new one. And I think, I'm not sure. I think the renewal of the creation in terms of the new heavens and new earth is deeply profound, however we see that. And Te Ao Māori's helped me see that beautiful interconnection of physicality and spirituality, which is the basis of Scripture and a scriptural understanding. The incarnation was God came to earth, the eternal divine, clothed in frail humanity, walked the dusty streets and paths of a specific geographical place. So that's been just so helpful.
Yeah. It's funny, as you were talking, like it again just reminded me of that metaphor of the warbler that you were talking about, where
Yes.
you know, it feels to me a bit like our Western culture is the big noisy thing.
Yes.
But actually in this land, there is another sound underneath that has been squashed, you know, that has been ignored or intentionally covered up.
Yes.
In a lot of cases as well. But thankfully is now again starting to be heard more.
Yeah.
And I think as long as we're not going in with our colonising attitude of what can we take, there is so much that we can be taught from the way that the people of this land, the way that they think, the way that they have that spirituality that's not separate from physicality, you know, and the way that, you know, so much of my early church life was about, okay, well, I've got over the line so that when I die, I'm going to that spiritual place.
Yes.
What now? You know,
exactly.
And whereas that, you know, again in Te Ao Māori, that's not a thing. You know that. Well, what now is that you get on with loving people and you know you listen to the wisdom of your elders and of your tipu, you know, your ancestors, and you make decisions with other people for the sake of the bigger story. And so I mean, I personally, you know, probably haven't been in the journey as long as you have, but it's been just such a revelation. And yet, as a couple of Pākehā guys sitting here talking about it, going, you know, let's still be careful how we walk in that space.
Certainly. And I would have to say, though, it's a profound journey. Just affirm what you're saying there, Andy. I feel enriched through this journey. I think you would say the same thing, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Not trying to be Māori, but the more of the language, the reo that I've learned has actually helped me understand Scripture in a deeper way and find my place as a European, as a Pākehā, in partnership. I think I'm really proud of our journey as a nation. I know it's really, really challenging, and where does this all fit? But in partnership, now with the beautiful multicultural expression that we have, I think there's a profound journey that we're on as a nation that is complex and challenging. I think we're leading the nations, though, in seeking to understand where these cultures come together in partnership. And I think it's deeply helpful for us as a Western church. It's not either or, but there's strengths of our Western world and there's strength of an Indigenous world, and we can hold those in tension. I think we're the richer for it as a nation, and as a church in this nation.
You mentioned there about, you know, not becoming Māori. I know for me and for a bunch of others who have started learning about things Māori, that's kind of a draw as, oh wow, there's this amazing thing here. I want to be part of that.
Yes.
You know, was that an experience for you as well? And then, like, how did you then find a place where actually know that I'm not Māori, but this is who I am within that space?
Yeah, good question. That's a deep question, because I was deeply drawn and think, this is a worldview that, if I was honest, I feel is richer than the world that I've come from. But learning to find my place in that and say, okay, I'm not Māori, and I better not try and become that, because it's appropriating somebody else's. That's like the new colonisation now as well. I've found these riches, I'm going to share them in church and get excited in that. But our heart has been I think the intent of our heart is being to learn and to listen. So when we posture ourselves as listeners, listen to the story, we hear the beauty of the story, that I think the redemptive potential of Aotearoa New Zealand, but also the pain. It doesn't take long to bump into the pain, to acknowledge that, and it's not my fault of what's happened, but we're all a part of this story, and somehow finding our place within that, Andy, I think is crucial. So that's why I love it in my mihi. Actually, no, I've discovered my people are the Celts, but I've been welcomed to this land, and I think that's the beauty of Te Tiriti, this great treaty that again can be misunderstood, but when you stop looking at it as some legal framework, it can fit in a constitution, but it's a relational document that says, my people were welcomed here. Now let's live in harmony and learn from one another. Then there's that kind of synergy of that kind of ecotone of where two cultures, or now many cultures, meet, and there's a richness in that meeting place. And if we can get past the misunderstanding and listen to one another, the richer we are for that.
I remember, I must have been back in about episode 9, I was talking to Te Kariri Whitia Scarborough.
Oh, yes.
And you know, we were having this kind of kōrero about things Māori and things Pākehā, and he said to me, you know, as a Pākehā, what are you proud of about your culture? I was
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the All Blacks.
Yeah,
You know, like,
yeah.
And he's like, bro, that's not good enough. Like, he just called me out on it. And
Yeah.
it wasn't, you know,
Yes.
I hadn't spent any time going, what am I part of that is good?
Yes.
Rather than just going, this bad, that good.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to defect over to that camp.
Yes.
You know, and he was
Yes.
like, bro, there's so much good, a lot of the modern medicine, you
Absolutely.
know, a lot of,
Yes.
you know, education stuff. There's
Yes.
all this stuff that's good
Yes.
about what your people have brought with you. You've got to own that and be proud of that, but there's a lot of good about what my people have as well, and it's about
Beautiful.
working together, you know. And
Yes.
I've never forgotten that. Like, he just
Yeah.
schooled me in the middle of my own podcast.
That's great,
But-
publicly. That's great, Andy.
Yeah. So you talk about having found a place in contemplative spirituality.
Yes.
And one of the things that you've embraced as part of that is going away for days at a time in silence. You're someone who likes a good kōrero. You're a social person.
Yes.
What on earth drove you to want to spend days in silence?
Good question. My dear wife Janice thinks it's a huge joke, me going on a silent retreat, and I've just been on a 7-day retreat, silent retreat, and I like to do that kind of annually. And what started me on that? So another creation story, because winding back, often we look at what we do, but why did I do that? What was my experience? I took our 2 oldest boys, John and Dave, to Sabah, East Malaysia, for a sabbatical. I don't know why it was a father-son trip, but it was, and sabbatical would have been 14, 15 years ago, and we were snorkeling again. That's why I started with a snorkeling story, because this second snorkeling story was now as a follower of Christ, and we were snorkeling off the coast of Sabah there, and it was gorgeous again, trying to catch the fish, which is just dumb, you know, this big white blob trying to chase these fish, which is their natural environment. So it's trying, but I honestly, it might sound strange, but I heard this voice. I became aware of a voice that said, "Be still, and I'll bring the fish to you." And I thought, okay. So I just lay in the water, snorkel on, and I just lay there, arms and legs outstretched. On a story, within milliseconds, the fish, thousands of fish, were all around me and nibbling. I thought, I hope none of you fellas have got big teeth or something, and I don't know, trying to get the little oxygen sacs off or I don't know, but it was overwhelming again that these fish were all around me. I felt very vulnerable, and after probably a few minutes or whatever, I broke off and said, "Boys, do this," and I honestly felt God spoke to me. You know, that might sound strange, but that inner voice that was over, and the boys did it, and they saw the same thing. So what I took out of that, it's been maybe my most defining encounter that says, Donald, slow down, be still. And then I use that scripture, Psalm 46, be still and know that I am God. And I came back speaking that. I still feel I'm still scratching the surface of what that word is about, because it's been deeply profound, is actually from a posture of stillness. It's not this dualistic either or thing of is it be still or be active. It's both and. But to come from this place of an inner peace, an inner stillness that was actually got the job done. It got the job done in Saba snorkeling, because what I wanted to do was make contact with the fish. But I entered their world, but when I was still, they came into my world. Yeah. And I thought, they welcomed me. Stillness welcomed me into another realm, which I found quite profound, because it wasn't based on my effort. And I think my faith journey, yes, but my journey of life has been so based on what I do, effort, activity, success, competition. It's the world I brought up in. Young fella, Kiwi bloke, cricket, rugby, school, shearing. Then the church world seems to be about success and achievement, because I'm a somebody now, because I got in the rugby team, or I shore more sheep than you, so I'm a success, aren't I? I'm okay. And I think, wow, the sense of stillness that, in the deeper sense, said, Donald, you're okay. Not because if you do something, you're okay because you're made in my image. And from that, finding a deeper source of identity, not based on what I did or my position or what I have, but based on this intrinsic value of being deeply loved by my Heavenly Father. So my snorkeling story has been just so profound. I just keep thinking, keep reflecting back on that. Say, just be still. This non-anxious presence, which is a language of contemplative world, I think. It's elusive because life is busy. We raised 4 boys. We were leading a church at the same time, and in a time doing all that and sharing and farming. So life has been busy. I think life has been too busy. If I reflect back now in my more mature years, Andy, I look back and I think we gave ourselves to everything we've done. And good on us, good intent. But I think overly responsible, if I was honest, and I wish I'd learnt to come to that deeper source of you're okay just as you are. So that causes me to bump into, as you told your story beautifully before, of actually I had to push into some deeper emotions or be aware of my emotions. I think as we go deeper into God, into true self, and I like that term of into stillness and identities from being, I also bump into my brokenness. We bump into our brokenness, and my brokenness has not been so much drugs and that out there, which is dabbled. But my deeper issues, I think, have been around drawing identity from what I do, needing to achieve. And as I look beneath that, I think I actually haven't felt okay with myself. So, am I okay? Well, I'm okay because I shore, a truckload of sheep one day, or I'm in this position or whatever. I'm okay because I do stuff. And I think that's been my brokenness speaking. And I think I'm okay because I'm a child of God. And so that need for affirmation or need for somebody to say you're okay, Donald, I've had to recognize that and get beneath my activity to find that place. The greatest teacher, I think, in life is what we would call perceive as failure. Think, I didn't do okay in that, and I'm still okay. Wow, now I think we're starting to hit on true sense of acceptance and belonging, and from that we grow.
I think all of that's quite profound in the context of this podcast, because I talk to so many people that are doing some amazing stuff.
Yes.
And quite a number of them have talked about getting to this place where actually they needed to be okay with themselves, whether this thing worked or not.
Yes.
Yes. I remember Alana from 27 Seconds Wine, who they give all their profits to support those coming out of slave trade and stuff.
Yes.
And
yes.
And she was saying, we had this idea, but actually I had to be okay with who I was.
Yes.
Because this may or may not work. And it has. I mean, it's been a great success, and I've been able to
it's fantastic, isn't it?
give
Yes.
so much money
Yeah.
to support these, particularly women and children coming out of slavery. But yeah, that for her there was a deep sense of
Yes.
actually this can't be who I am.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm in trouble.
That's right, and our identity rides in my success or lack thereof. And I think I feel growing into a greater sense of freedom. You know, we achieve total freedom when we're face to face with the Lord, but a growing sense of freedom, because I don't think we're free when we need to achieve. Because one day I do well, I'm a success, the other day I'm not, and I'm a failure. And I think freedom comes from that internal understanding I'm deeply loved, come what may. So circling back to, I got us off tangent. We're not really trying to answer that question. So that has outworked for me into moments and silent retreats, because that's the place, ironically, I feel as an extrovert that does like to use lots of words, and my thought process is very external. Actually, I felt the Lord slowed me down, snorkeling, but being still and not speaking, and removing any sense of ego, of, you know, trying to find your place in a crowd or whatever. The externals, when that's totally removed, you may be in a crowd, but when that's taken away, and the verbal thing has been an expression of that for me, when I'm just in a silent retreat, I actually hear something deeper, Andy. I hear my brokenness, but even deeper than that, I hear the glory that God's put within us. And so often the church says, well, we need just to recognise that we're sinners, and say, yeah, I bumped into that. But, you know, when I listen, I hear something deeper. Because I think this is my Celtic tipuna say this: the deepest mark in our lives is not sin, but the image of God.
Yeah.
And when we need to acknowledge our brokenness and how that brokenness impacts us, influences us. But there's a deeper sound that's the image of God that's in each one of us, and understanding how that is expressed through my life. And I just love now, ironically, I love silence. Most of my prayer is me being still before the Lord and listening. I think the Lord's happier with that, and not just kind of saying, this is what you should be doing, Lord, but listening and responding to that, though, hearing something deeper. So silent retreats have done that for me, has slowed me down, and I've become aware of an inner conversation. So Galatians and Romans both talk about within us. There's a cry, the Spirit cries within us, Abba, Father. And I think when I'm quieter, when I dial down, I actually hear that conversation within me, because there's actually a prayer that's within me, which is this Trinitarian God who's within me by Spirit crying out to the Father, Abba, Father, that's within me. And I think prayer is just joining God's conversation within us, and then at times we put words to that. So creation has helped me enter a conversation, because I hear God speaking in the midst of creation, which helps me access, when I see something out there, it helps me access something in here. So I went on a little personal silent retreat before my last 7-day silent retreat. Just went up, took camper van up to Kaikoura, and I just parked up there by the old pub at the old wharf there, and there's a camper van place there, and I watched the sun rise and I watched the sun set for a couple of days, and the creational magnificence of the mountains and the sea and the bird life and that. And I was just in my happy place, and just was reading stuff about soulscape, i.e. when you see the landscape, when I see the mountains out there, what's that saying to me about who God is? But what's it also saying to me about who I am? And I see the mountains there, the Kaikoura Mountains, just beautiful, snow-capped, and the strength of those, the beauty of those, the vision, and piercing the heavens of the mountains. And then the sea and the flow of water, whether it's river or sea, or the washing, the cleansing, all speaking to me of something of who God is. But that going on out there represents something going on within me. And I love that connection again between external world and internal world. And then thinking, God, what's your invitation here? What are you inviting me into being and responding to that sense of being?
I did a 3-day silent retreat a couple of years ago.
Well done.
And in some ways I kind of thought, oh man, this is going to be like really hard 3 days, and I couldn't imagine doing any longer than that. But actually, kind of by the time I got to day 3, I was like, oh, I'm just sort of starting to learn how to do this.
Yes.
And I feel like I'd need a few more days to actually...
Yes.
Do you find it something that you've got better at? Like, is it a skill?
I think it's a learned habit. I think it is a skill. Because it's interesting, 3 days. I think it probably takes 2 to 3 days to actually just slow down. I don't need you phone. I've got all these things going on. I just need to lay. It just takes. We live in this busy world, Andy, and you can't get out of that. You're a parent, you know. You're a responsible person, so it's not coming totally out of that world. I'm convinced that we need to have spaces. I think every day that we do something like that every day, because we just forget. Every day, I love creating sacred space. So I sit on my red chair here where I am now and look out on my bird ponds out there, just sitting and being every day. And that's not a religious habit for me. Well, it has become a habit. I love the word of rhythm. It's become a life-giving rhythm for me that I don't think I could live without now. I so enjoy getting up. I get up early in the morning and just actually, I feel I'm with the Lord. And then respond to that and the word, and just washes over me. And so again, in a spot every day, and doing that on regular rhythms, whether it's annually or something, that you've got a greater space to say, I am more than what I do. Yeah. I'm reminded of that. And yes, to dial into that, I think is actually a discipline.
Yeah. Having experienced them, you've also led some silent retreats for others. What's that experience been like for you, sort of in comparison with that? And how is that experience the same or different, leading others on one than doing it for yourself?
I'm smiling as you say that, because it's been quite challenging. The whole silence thing for me has been challenging, and leading people in silence retreat is slightly counterintuitive for me. Yeah. And so I've trained as a spiritual direction, which has just been fantastic, a way of helping, just coming alongside people to help them be aware of what God's already doing in their lives and helping them notice. So that's a great privilege. So, but as an extrovert, when there's space, my initial training in this would be I'd fill space, because space is the enemy. Silence is the enemy, because you don't know what you're doing or so. And so I would fill space and silence with words until someone gently reminded me that that's probably not that helpful in what we're trying to do here. And silence and space is just a beautiful opportunity to go deeper. So I've had to learn to be comfortable with silence, which is probably easier on your own, but then maybe when you're with others and leading others, this pressure to maybe be somebody or be the expert. Like, I've been a pastor for 30 years, and you come to me for help, and I will give you the answers from the word or from my great experience. That's what a good pastor does, isn't it? That's what a good leader does, is because we are the experts. And I think I've had to come to realise in my great understanding that I feel I know less now. I feel I'm less certain, and I'm actually really happy. I feel we're called to know on a deeper level than just an informational, cognitive basis. And that learning is important. But there's a deeper knowing. So Paul prayed in Ephesians 1:18, I pray that the eyes of your heart would be open, the eyes of your innermost being would be opened. So there's a deeper way of knowing, that you might know the hope of his calling, he says. And I think there's a deeper way, not either or. Head, it's not head versus heart, but I think in a biblical Judeo-Christian worldview, it's head positioned in the heart, not separated, but the heart is, if I could use the word portal, a doorway into a deeper way of knowing, which is accessing our heart. Silence helps us do that, and I've had to learn that silence actually is this doorway to being present. And I think when we're present to the moment and to someone, we're present to presence with a big P. So it's slowing down, being present. And I realize in my busyness, action-defined world, I was either in the past in regret or excitement, or in the future with opportunities, but not always present. I mean, I can be at the meal table with my beautiful family. My face is present, but my mind and heart is just somewhere else in the past or the future. But learning to be present, to be with somebody, to be with God, I think is the great invitation and opportunity. And when we're present to presence, we hear at a deeper level. So that's been a real challenge for me, but I think a great opportunity. So I do love trying to bring people into silence, but there's stuff that goes on for me within that. I just have to recognise that.
Yeah. As we kind of get near the end of our korero, you've sort of, in reflecting on what we were going to talk about, you've written some things.
Yes.
You've done a me and dabbled into some poetry, some creative writing.
Yes.
Yeah, do you want to just share with us what it is that you've written?
Well, I'm a bit nervous of this because I'm talking to the poet extraordinaire, the spoken word. And you're highly gifted at that, and you've inspired me. You've inspired me to write a poem. I think actually some of these things have come from my silence and silent retreat, where I've learnt the only way that I can express things is through poetry, not through informational language. So this is my attempt at expressing what's going on within me. So this one came out of, Janice and I did the Otago Rail Trail, and I just came across this, I'd actually read this term, it was actually somebody, I can't remember whose expression for the kingdom of God, a dimension of spaciousness. And I thought, I really enjoyed that. But I experienced that in the landscape of Central Otago. So here we go, this is called Dimensions of Spaciousness. Otago Rail Trail, ancient pathway, once mighty steam train to power of the pedal, now electric, does avoid the strain. Tourists in a stark land, pilgrims searching in the vast dimensions of spaciousness, stunned by the visible, yet drawn by the invisible, stillness, solitude, sacred calling ever deeper, mountains reaching for the heavens, craggy rocks tumbling wildly, covering wide valleys like rabbits, nibbling ecosystem fragile, impostors from a dimension not of this whenua. E ririana te ka rearea, the falcon flies, watching, swooping, free, the sacred bearing wings, piercing the veil. Thick darkness of night, stars shining, celestial bright, breathing heaven, illuminating earth. Summer sting of sun, winter bite of frost, creation's handiwork is visible manifestation of invisible glory. Heaven seen through the doorway of earth, eternity birthed in the here and now. Boundless glory manifest in that which is bounded. Rail trail pilgrims through enchanted lands, for those with eyes to see. That which is beheld mysteriously awakens that which is within. Pilgrims learning to be present to presence, for could it be dimensions of spaciousness discovered deep within me? The end.
Oh, beautiful. That's, yeah, really beautiful.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you for summarising that, I guess, this whole korero.
In a way it does, doesn't it, of that longing to pierce the veil that we see expressed in the here and now.
Well, thank you for giving time to korero with us today, and for reminding us about being able to find our value in who we are, not what we do. I found it a great reminder, and yet also a great challenge to know our value, to know our worth, aside from that which we do. No matter how much good we're doing in the world and how much beauty we're bringing into the world, that isn't what defines us. And thank you for reminding us of that, and but for sharing your journey of becoming more aware and more present. Thank you for what you're doing and being to bring a bit of heaven down to earth.
Thank you.
Hello, hello heaven. Will I hear you whisper to come near?
Ngā mihi nui tono. What a great encouragement that we are enough, that we are capable of great good, but we are valuable no matter what. Your example as one who is learning to be and learning to listen is beautiful. Challenging, but so necessary. Thank you for sharing that journey with us. Here is a blessing for you. Donald, may birds continue to prophesy to you of the goodness and interconnectedness of all things. May each bird, each song, each colour impart in you an understanding of the world far beyond that you once knew. May you continue to grow in your ability to see heaven here on earth, when birds and trees, oceans and mountain ranges instill in you a sense of wonder and awe over and over again. And in those moments, may you know more of the divine and of the divine in you. May you continue to know the glory within that surpasses your brokenness, that your brokenness would be revealed to you so that healing may come, but that who you are in spite of your brokenness would dominate the narrative you live by. May you continue to walk lightly in the world of Māori, demonstrating a relational engagement that other Pākehā might follow, where there is giving, not taking, empowering and not marginalising, listening and not dominating the sound waves, but hearing far beyond the words to the heart of a people. And may you be enriched as you acknowledge your privilege, yet choose to step out of the way to allow others to flourish. May you continue to know deep in your mind and your heart that you are more than your actions, more than your status in society. You are good, you are enough. And lastly, may you know you are seen, you are heard, and you are loved. Thanks to Strahan for the music and Rangi for the karakia. Join me next time when Tash McGill takes over the podcast and puts me in the hot seat. Tash is a broadcaster, creative, storyteller, writer and strategist. She's chairperson of the New Zealand Whisky Association and an international spirits judge. She works in business transformation, especially within the food and beverage and hospitality industries. And she hosts a podcast called The Transformationist, which I totally recommend checking out. We talk about creating yourself rather than finding yourself, about changing our minds on theology and life, baggy jeans and oversized football jerseys, being a white male in a world of white male privilege, and we explore how my new book came to be and why it was written. It's getting released on my birthday, so this is my birthday present to you. I hope you'll join me. Until then, me inoi tātou.
E tō mātou matua I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tau mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua, kia rite anō ki tō te rangi. Homai kia mātou ai nei, he taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā. Muro mātou hara, me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga, e hara ana kia mātou. Aua hoki mātou e kawea, kia whakawaia, engari whakaorangi a mātou.